My name is Justin Ancheta from SF Garnish Music Production and Soul Graffiti Studios. Thanks for being back with us. Every Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., we are doing West Coast Wednesdays. That's right, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And thank you to the Garnish Music Network for inviting us out every Wednesday. If you guys haven't liked and subscribed to our pages, we're going live on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. And we look forward to seeing you at our Beer and Beats on Tuesdays, 6 to 9 as well. Today's special guest is Scott Nice. He's a DJ up in the Sierra Nevada foothills, and he's been touring around internationally now for quite some time, making some rad compilation mixes, collaborating with some great artists himself, and a great DJ at that as well. He's been using Ableton for many years now. He's going to get into Ableton and also some details on how he does his mixes. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
Yeah, for sure, man. So we didn't really prep on like what questions, and one reason why I like doing that is that it kind of brings it to the moment. So we haven't really thought about what we're doing here. I just really want to have it coming from your heart. And really, what I really like about your playlist, I've actually used it in the backyard here quite sometimes, you know, pre and post show or just sitting in the hot tub, driving. It's great for even dancing. What is the thing that is like a backbone aspect of music for you?
For both production and for curating playlists, or for DJ sets, it's all based around some sort of healing element or some sort of indigenous quality to the music. So a lot of the songs that I'm well known for are medicine songs, songs that are used in traditional ceremonies with or without plant medicine. And I guess the other piece that naturally goes there is that it's everything has a world flavor to it. There's heavy influence from Afro-Latin, Latin vibes. Have a new song this last year with a Turkish vocalist. I'm working on this song. I have one song out in Hebrew. I'm working on another song in Hebrew. Just got to record with a woman with Tibetan. So it's kind of, it's a world flavor.
Nice. Yeah, you once told me that you're kind of working on collaborating with people that are singing in different languages and bringing that in. Is that kind of part of the plant medicine aspect of it, kind of opening people to different cultures?
It's interesting. My own tradition is in a more Vedic, using Sanskrit, but I was never attracted to using that specific sound for my production. But that naturally gave me an inclination towards prayer in other languages that lets the logical mind and puts that to the side when you don't know what, especially if it's not your language, it opens you up to like a different, more mystical side of our consciousness, a less logical side. It just worked out that the people around me that were singing prayers and these beautiful melodies happened to be working in the realm of plant medicines. But that's not specific, like the songs in the other traditions. That's more specific to a lot of the Spanish songs that I have in my repertoire.
Nice. And I just feel like your path actually in your music, I actually feel like you have a lot of like healing or like wanting to put out really a good force into the world. I think Sahuna is somebody else that is like that, some of the people that you surround yourself with. What brought you on this path of trying to create some healing in the world?
Yeah, so I started off over 20 years ago as a hip hop DJ, playing hip hop and kind of dance hall infused. And around that time, I went through fibromyalgia. I went through kind of a pretty intense nervous system, chronic, what's the right word, challenge. And so that brought me, I sold my turntables, I sold my records, I quit my job as a graphic designer, I quit everything, quit photography, and I studied Ayurvedic medicine full time in order to get my own health back. I was already at that time, I was already meditating and doing certain practices that were good for my health, but it drove me to of an extreme of being in pain and needing to work with it. And so those years, those 5 or so years that I quit making music and quit everything, when I came back into all my art and music and all the things that I love, I came back to it like as a different person, because I saw that everything, I was so used to all my life being rooted towards healing, that I wanted everything I did to continue that.
Wow.
You know, it created a sensitivity to kind of some of the other energies that we're creating, you know, with, you know, mainstream music or whatever. I still have fun taking and seeing pieces in all sorts of genres that I can use, but I'm always looking for how I can make it more beneficial.
Awesome. Yeah, I just really got moved by you talking about your story, because my friend just got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. I think he's had it for a long time, but just kind of came around late to knowing that. And I think that it could be really healing for him to kind of come around, not from the mainstream, but from like the Ayurvedic side of things, because he's not doing that currently. So I'll have to talk to you more about that as well. And really, I think that it's just a testament to like our challenges in life, you know, kind of, and coming out with some fire, you know, and I think that your music has done that, which is really cool. And congrats too, just to your health, you know, and what you've done for yourself too. That's
Thank
awesome. So really going back to your music here. I know that we talked a little bit about, you know, different things driving the music, like the clave, like the Latin, you know, influence of the percussion. And then also you talked about the vocalists singing in different languages. Is there something that you want to kind of share with us around what, you know, some special tips at all?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess there's two levels to address it on. One is on the broader level of art direction. I come from a graphic design and art direction background. So when I approach a song, I approach it from a little different of a background and standpoint, because I'm looking at a little bit more specifically, what's the sound? Like, what are the sounds that just get me the most excited? And also, how can I put things together in a new way? How can I take this type of like Argentinian percussion and combine it with this kind of synth lead sound from like future bass? That kind of amalgamation gets me really excited. And a lot of my approach is from that excitement of the mashup. It's like DJs like Z Trip and Girl Talk and all these like kind of old school DJs. They did what they call the mashup, where they're taking two disparate things and combining them in a new way that's that's fun and exciting and fresh. And so one of the key factors for me has always been percussion. I'm a turntablist, a scratch DJ. I used to play tabla a little bit. And so, so percussion, for me, the rhythms and percussion of, like, I would say long-standing cultures, like a longer standing culture than we have, you know, in North America. There's just a flavor. There's a flavor that's so deep that gets the energy in the body and the soul moving. And it's this kind of primal energy or rhythm that I'm always looking at. So no matter if it's like a 4 to the floor, more of like a traditional kind of house beat, or like a boom bap, more like of a hip hop structure, the most important thing to me, those are kind of like the backbone, you know, the downbeats. But the most important thing to me is, what's the percussion that's working off those angles? What's the percussion that's giving this, like, you know, indigenous primal life to our, you know, logical world here.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds beautiful, man. Why don't we go ahead and have you share your screen, and we can kind of like start dissecting the innards. And I think that maybe some great questions will come up around, you know, risers and movements of music. I'm sure we'll get into it here.
Yeah, this is a file that I just started working on. I just sent to an artist, Mose, who currently is living in San Marcos, Guatemala. He's quite well known. And the kind of genre that's kind of developing, it's really interesting. There's a lot of like cacao ceremony and ecstatic dance that's related with the styles that I'm creating and that also Mose is creating. There's a lot of use in yoga playlists, which has some very energetic pieces, but also is keeping people internal.
Nice.
So this is one of those things that I was just sharing with you recently. That was kind of fun, where I had an audio loop, like a reference.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through and I had this sample pack from an Argentinian percussion, and there was individual sounds and then also like a full pre-composed loop. So I ended up going through in order to have the level, like using loops is great, especially for percussion, but to have the level of making it your own, and for mixing especially, being able to sculpt the high end and the low end and the mids exactly how you want, you kind of need to go and recreate everything from MIDI. So that's what I have here. I have a whole drum rack. I have a whole drum rack that I recreated, that I used to recreate these rhythms, because it's those nuances that's another thing. It's like, if in this genre, it's all about incorporating organic with electronic.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that same, I think even in most genres, even if they've got a hi-hat, they want it to sound a little different, like Disclosure, when he's talking about like his whole house genre, like he's always finding ways to automate so that there's differences and nuances and it doesn't sound static. Similarly, if you're going to be programming a drum that uses a hand drum, you need the strikes to sound different. And that gives you a melody within the rhythm. And that's what I really love about good secondary percussion, is that you get these differences that create almost like a melody. If you're just hearing a boom and a clack, it's pretty boring. But with a good percussion, you can have melody in the beat without anything playing, without any obvious melody playing. So here, I'll
we solo that maybe, or
yeah. So this is just like the underlying kind of kick drum section. And then we add in like the little,
I like the clacks.
The little clacks. Yeah, boom, boom, clack.
Are you playing that with a pad, or are you just drawing that in?
I'm drawing that in, and it's funny, I don't have the loop obvious in this, but if I pulled in the loop, you could see where stuff is like actually lined up on like off hits. Like right here is a lot of like little off-grid hits. And what it was is there was, I'm just looking at the waveform and seeing where there's like where the strikes are, and getting that organic feel by having stuff be a little bit more off-grid.
Nice.
So yeah, so when all this, let's see, when all the drums play together, it's and then when you add in the kick, these shakers are done live.
Nice.
So it gives you like a traditional, more of a traditional vibe and a very non-traditional vibe at the same time. The traditional vibe is kind of more cultural piece of the hand drums. And the more original vibe is it's not a typical beat, you know?
Mm-hmm. It's obviously like hand selected by you. You know, just
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the things when I first started producing like 12 years ago was that I was kind of tired of the very typical beats that you would hear. Everything's either boom bap, like a hip hop beat, or a house beat. And so like my first album back in 2016, there's not a lot of super defined kick drums and snares and claps, which now when I go back, like I'm not to such an extreme because I've learned the wisdom of a clean mix with the kick and a really clean mix of a pronounced clap or snare.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time I was just so over it. I wanted a departure. And so, yeah, so this is a good example of still being on that path of finding new rhythms, you know, like new grooves, new in the sense of like comparatively to where most electronic music's at, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's awesome, man. It's so amazing that in the sample world, you can go so acoustic sounding and it's so clean as well. It allows for that like electronic music sound to come out. And if you actually need more of like that, like other sounds, you actually have to put that other sounds in, you know, whether it be like a vinyl sound or a little creak or whatever.
Yeah. 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 And it's kind of the nuances and the kind of like softer elements that gives it a little bit more of it almost like naturally brings the mind and the feelings to a different place, you know? I think that's why people love, you know, having this for ceremony and having this for cultivating that own vibe in their space, you know?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And it looks like you did some, like the shaker looks like it was recorded live.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there are live elements in there to kind of make that come across.
Yeah. The shaker's great. And that's where that's one of the few things that I always, you know, just pop out the microphone and just getting all those little subtleties, just creating a space, you know, creating an atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. That's great. This is a little side note. I don't want to throw you off from where you're going, so definitely please come back. So I see that there's 6 sends, I think, in arrangement view right there. And I wanted to kind of see your sends, and because I do 3 reverbs and 3 delays, and I have them short, medium, and long. And I wanted to see kind of comparing to what you do.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I usually have a really short Ableton drum reverb on my first send that I use. I don't even know if I'm using it. Oh, I'm just using it on. Yeah, I'm using it on this kind of like lower kick-ish. But I actually use that pretty sparingly. The plate reverb's a little bigger of it's Valhalla. It's a little bigger of a reverb. And this is my more general reverb where it's not going to eat too much of this headroom up. And then my third is this chamber, which is the big one, which I use for flutes. And let's see if we got it on the guitar. Oh no, I have RC Retro on the guitar. So, but usually I use that for bigger sounds that are being welcomed to take up a lot of space, you know?
Nice.
But I have kind of a generic delay that's a little bit of a longer one that I've kind of gotten away from using the delay on the return. Sometimes I'll have a very specific delay on the track itself because every sound I feel like needs such a fine tailored delay. It was becoming harder for me to just have it set up in my returns. One of the most individual things is the saturation return. This Soft Tubes saturation knob, it is a free download, and Soft Tubes is really dope. They create a lot of plugins for other brands like Native Instruments, but they also have plugins directly. And this is a free download.
That's great.
And you can click on their presets, and there's a couple just like kind of basic presets, but the main piece of the main situation is it's just one knob and this keep high, neutral, or low.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole thing here, I have it on keep high because my whole thing with the saturation is I'm just trying to get some higher frequency sounds from some lower frequency sounds, basically.
I see. So you're kind of like creating overtones with that saturator.
Exactly. And so this is the key when we're talking about, let's see, this bass doesn't actually use it. I'm using, in a similar way on this bass, I'm using RC20. And Splice is not letting me access it right now. But RC20 is a great retro vintage plugin that also has saturation in it. So on this specific case, but let's say if I take that off and I'm playing this, just playing this really simple sine wave, you hear how even on a phone or laptop speakers, all of a sudden it's more audible.
I see.
And so you see, I've got an EQ set up. So the low end is clean. The low end is exactly what you're hearing. And this is just bringing in
those overtones.
200 to 1K.
Wow, super tight filter.
And so when you're hearing it in the mix, you can just tailor it to get the perfect amount of audible sound. Lately, I've been backing off a little bit. I see that in my older productions. I really wanted the power of the mid bass, like in these mid tones. And I see that, especially when you're playing on louder systems and a lot of people have good access to sub systems that play good sub frequency. And so you get a much cleaner mix when you're rocking this in a really lower manner. I still always test to see if the bass is audible through my laptop speakers and through my phone, just playing my phone without any headphones. I still want to have some, but now I've gotten it so it's more subtle. Like if I subtly hear it through my laptop speakers, then that's perfect amount of mid-range bass. If I can't hear it at all, then it's too it's too focused on the sub. I need to have a little saturation.
Nice. That's a great trick.
But you can also use this also works great for drums, especially some of these, like for this, for instance. It brings out some of those upper frequencies that might be a little bit low, and it's all relative to the mix. If you solo things and work on them soloed, it's not, sometimes you waste a lot of time because how that instrument's going to sound in the mix, that's what you need to base it off of.
Definitely kind of A/B it in and out with the mix.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. And you just briefly did that thing where the RC20 or 40, whatever it was.
RC20, yeah.
RC20, yeah, came up and it said splice not retrievable. I just wanted to mention to everybody that Splice is a great way that you can just pay monthly and like rent to own situations. And it's a way that you can even try out different plugins, and it's not totally for free, but it's also more affordable than having to throw down $300 to $500 or more on different things.
Yeah, I was paying $5 a month for like a year or whatever. I don't know. It was a pretty affordable plugin, but I just hit their no interest, and so I could start using it right away. That's
great. Awesome, man. So we went into drums a little bit and a little bit of the bass. And this is a track that doesn't have vocals yet because you just sent this out to someone.
No, this has some vocals, some vocal samples in it. The artist I sent it to, Mose, he's a producer. He's not a vocalist.
Okay.
And so this is a start that I sent him for a collaboration. One of the hardest things that I've found is, man, I've only maybe successfully sent out a collaboration with another producer once. Many of the times when I've tried to collaborate with other producers, the track's too developed, And so it's trying to find like a middle point where it's developed enough to get excited myself, to get the other artists excited to work on it, but not so developed that they're just like, this is pretty much a finished track. There's no room for my voice. So that's what I'm sharing. I'm sharing like one of the very few that is developed enough, but also has enough space for him to add in chord progressions, go a whole different direction. I mean, when his tracks are a lot of his tracks are like 7-8 minutes long. So who knows where this will end up. But here, the vocals that I have in here.
That's a sample that you got off Splice or something, or?
So my main two secret weapons with samples, and especially vocal samples, because I always like to have some sort of, even if it's ambient like these, are Splice and Arcade. And actually, I don't use really any vocal samples from Splice that are like leads. A lot of times they're little tiny sounds, but for like more lead vocal sounds, I use Arcade, which is a subscription. I think it's $10 a month. And Arcade's through this company called Output. If you see in my plugins here, my VSTs, I have a lot of stuff from Output. Yeah, let's see if it's easier in here. Yeah, so Movement, Portal, they make a great bass plugin called Substance. Exhale is genius. Exhale is it's through Contact Player, which is a free player that you can use through Native Instruments. And Exhale has a ton of rad pad sounds and different sounds that are all manipulated from vocals. So that's another good, before I got Arcade, before they created Arcade, I used a lot of like little vocal pad sounds from Exhale. From Output. But now that they have Arcade, let's see if I could just open up an instance and show you guys. So Arcade has all these kits, and that's where it's different from Splice. Splice, you're going around and looking at these packs, but in Arcade, they have all these lines. Like they just created this new one, Brainwaves. It's like, I don't know, psychedelic. They had just created this new one called Leads, where they have all these kits under that title. They just have this one 60s for iconic 60s riffs, you know. This one, Saison's really dope. They're starting to really delve into some of those newer emerging niches, like the Latin electronic music niche, which is blowing up. And so Saison is dedicated specifically to that, which is amazing. I just found some rad samba guitar that I'm using for a new track from that. Distant Voices, that's where that sample came from that I was just using. This is all, you click on this and it comes up with all these different packs, and you can, download them, load them up, and then you have your key here. So it's natively in E major, and you can transpose it to minor and then, figure out whatever your key that you're working in.
Very
and
cool.
Yeah, it's been a great resource. I try to limit myself with both Splice and Arcade to just finding like one core thing that I want to use in my song, so that everything else is, so that it's more original. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to build a song using all my pieces from one place.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. That's great.
So like in this song per se, I had a reference for guitar line I really liked, and I sent it to my friend Ananda, who's an amazing guitarist, and I said I want it in this key, and this is kind of the pattern I'm looking for, and he came back with this perfect guitar riff that matched the kind of triplet vibe. And yeah, so that's all
nice.
original.
That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. So it is, similar to like DJing, and then also adding in the originality. It looks like the drums per se are, done more organically, even though there's like MIDI in there, it's like pretty organic MIDI.
Yeah, and it's so funny. It's kind of like where we're at, trying to find, you know, a mashup between organic and electronic, between the logical and the intuitive, you know, between light and dark within a track. But that's, yeah, I really, a lot of times those vocal samples just happen to work and I threw them in later. The song's really not based around them. The song's really based around this percussion and this guitar piece. So even if Mose wanted to just axe them, it's all good, you know, because the core of the song is really clear to me. And that's, you know, that's just more like dressing on the top. But I really do like to emphasize finding one thing. I think to base a song around as a producer is a really great way. At least it's the best way that I figured out. It really determines like the key of the song, determines the tempo, it determines a lot, and it inspires a lot. So I really encourage people to like find one little sound. Like if you're, you know, if you're hitting like a wall or something, go on Splice, go on Arcade, listen to sounds. And the only caveat there is to not get down a rabbit hole that isn't what you really want. Like you might hear a cool sound and it sounds cool, but it's like, is that really what, you know, or do you really want to make like dubstep? You know what I mean? Like that's, you know, like to allow it to give you some inspiration.
Mm-hmm. That's great. The focus to really listen to a bunch of samples and like hone it in and keep your focus. That seems like a really good advice.
Yeah. And if you go down a rabbit hole, it'll just be more stuff that you don't release, but you had fun and we're doing what you love, you know?
Mm-hmm. Was it you that told me like you make 100 songs and release like 2 or 3 of them?
No, it's definitely not me.
That's not you.
I'm kind of the opposite. Usually if I'm spending time on something, it's pretty sure that I'm going to wrangle it
nice.
for release.
Good for you, man. I think your background as a graphic designer, you know, and videographer, you know.
Yeah, you have to get shit done. You have to put stuff out. That's the whole thing with being a professional, you know, visual artist is everything you work on is for a client and needs to be done with the idea of it seeing the light of day.
Totally. And on an annual basis, what's your goal of albums or singles released?
In the past, it was an album a year. The Polish Ambassador is an artist that I used to work with a lot and have some releases on his label. And he always recommended that kind of consistency builds up, like, you know, over many years, builds up a great fan base. But it's funny that the last couple of years, I've been more just releasing remixes for other artists and really taking the time. I kind of got out of the mind state of finishing things and realized that I needed to start things. I need to constantly not get into tunnel vision. What happens is like when I get a song that's close or a bunch of songs that's close, I go into, okay, this is so close. I need to like wrap it up. And that last 10%, like many people say, that last 10% of the process can be arduous, you know, like with mixing and all the details. And it seemed like it was done, but there's a lot of details. So rather than getting stuck in that production stage, I gave myself the task to just have something exciting, start something new, and then don't get totally sucked in by that, start something else. And a lot of times what's happening is there'll be other ideas that come up that don't work in the current song where I copy, open up a new file, paste it in there, and that's the start of a new song. And that's worked out really great where sometimes I'll change the key or something so I don't have too many tracks in this, you know, in the same key. But starting with quarantine over the last 2 years, last year I was just starting. And then this last year I was finishing. And so going into 2022 here, I'll be releasing a new single every 2 weeks. The first 5 months of the year pretty much slated. So, but my goal is to have 24 new tracks out for 2022, which will be the most I've ever been able to release in a year. And part of the reason I'll be able to do that is because I've been sending stuff out to other producers for remixes, and I haven't been waiting till, a full album's done. The whole releasing singles these days is the best way to get your music out. Using Spotify, you can submit one song to their release radar at a time. So if you finish a whole album and go to release it, you can only have one of those songs be chosen for release radar.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, having 8,000 people of the release radar possibly seeing it, it's kind of a waste of those other tracks for those people to not see those. Mm-hmm. So the numbers are crazy, how different it is when a track goes through release radar that doesn't,
mm-hmm.
kind of no one sees it unless it gets picked up down the line by some playlists. So so releasing singles, and one of the advantages to that as well, finish up a single, get it mastered, put it into the mix while you're still working on other stuff, and you're not having to delay an album until all the songs are done. And you can keep this rapport and this connection with your homies, with your fans, and get to share, because sometimes it's like you're holding on to stuff for years that you still haven't got really to share with the public. And so it's really rewarding in that way. But it also allows you to go ahead and it's like, okay, this is getting mastered. This is this is going to be released in a month or whatever. Why don't I hit up some producer and have them work on a remix for it, so that 6 months down the line, there's another new track. And so what's happening is this new year, I'm dropping a full album that I've been dropping singles every month for. And along with that, I have 8 remixes that are already done, from handing out these originals throughout the year. And it also is a lot more timely. I've done remix albums before where it's a lot of work to manage everyone's remixes. You got to give revisions, and there's a lot of back and forth. And so rather than doing it all at once, it was way more manageable, just handing them out here and there, getting them back here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden I have 4 months of releases, 2 songs a month just from this remix album.
That's great.
And they get 50%, I get 50%. It goes, they're listed as a primary artist, so it goes to their numbers, and their numbers are boosted. They get to connect with my fan base, like I said, 8,000 people or so that are following on Spotify, and then in turn I get to connect with their fan base. So it's really beautiful. It really feels that connectedness in the heart, to be able to collaborate like that.
Nice. That's really cool. On the DistroKid, you're using DistroKid, right, for distribution?
I was using DistroKid, but we ran into some issues this year, releasing a remix on another artist's album. Mm-hmm. And there were some issues with it not hitting release radar, which basically, tracks that could have got tens of thousands of plays are now at just a few thousand. And it basically made it not worth the release to even happen if that avenue of distribution is not open.
I see.
So I started looking at Mo's, the artist that I mentioned before, who's got a huge following and he's incredible. He mentioned this another distribution network called Amuse, which is out of Switzerland or Sweden. And so I've been working with them. There's still issues working with them. And at this point, I'm just I get driven crazy by, dealing with problems from DistroKid or dealing with problems with Amuse, but I'm trying to stay strong. The coolest reason that I'm trying to stay with Amuse as long as I can is that with DistroKid, in order for collaborators to get paid, they have to do a paid account, which is $30 a year. Mm-hmm. But with Amuse, you can have a paid account or you can have a free account, and they take 15%. And so with these tracks that I have with these vocalists, who are, community leaders and lineage holders, they're not professional musicians. They don't need to spend $30 a year when they're only getting $50 maybe back from royalties. Mm-hmm. So they can sign up for a free account with Amuse. they only take 15%, and it just works out much better. If the song does really well and there's a lot more coming in, then they can have like, pay $25, whatever, and have a paid account. But that alone is the reason I'm dealing with the headache of, other issues that they have.
So you are using DistroKid still and Muse kind of combo?
Muse, yeah. So I'm not releasing new stuff. I'm actually in the process of switching over some back catalog to a Muse. But I do still have a bunch of other collaborations with other artists. They're all through DistroKid. So right now I'm working with two distribution companies. The other issue with DistroKid that I didn't switch over is that they, at least the last time I looked, you had to pay extra for additional artists. If you're doing tracks with, if you're doing collaborations with a lot of other artists, they start charging you for those additional artists, like $130 for like, this paid account. So that's another reason I'm not stoked on DistroKid.
Yeah, I actually noticed that. I've been collaborating, and every time I put a new name in, it's like you're limited for a label to have 5 names, and then you have to pay for more or something.
Yeah, give us more money.
Yeah.
So Muse doesn't have anything like that, which is another good thing in its favor. But they keep flagging songs. Like I'll put up album art and it'll say featured, and then they'll change the back end so it's a featured artist, and then they're not. It's not showing up on their Spotify page like it would a primary artist. There's all these details where they keep messing me up, or they just like squash a release and say that it's not approved for, like they go over stuff with a fine tooth comb and find stuff in there that like DistroKid would have never like sweated or never asked to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They were like, oh, do you have a contract? Do you have rights for this? And I had to send them like, this is my contract with the artist. But yeah, with DistroKid, it would just go in the system and it wouldn't get flagged and there would be held up. The only reason that's such release schedule, and the more they hold up a track, you're going to miss. If they hold up a track too long, you'll miss that window. And with Release Radar, you need to submit on this track needs to show up in your Spotify backend, ideally 2 weeks in advance, and submit it at least a week in advance in order for their editorial team to look at it and to approve it for Release Radar.
Is that why you did every 2 weeks? Because you were kind of thinking about the timeline of Radar?
Yeah. Yeah, you do. Yeah. And it's pretty much like, it's so funny, like in this industry that I'm in, at least in this genre of like West Coast kind of, I don't even know what the genre is, but here on the West Coast, there's a lot of producers that I chat with. I was chatting with Soul Rising, who just did 40 million plays on Spotify this year. Nice. So he's definitely an expert. And he was just talking about that too. Like a lot of his growth came from, releasing as much as possible. Some people are even releasing once a week. They might be foregoing, because I don't think all that can hit Release Radar. So they might be foregoing some of that. And I think that's what happened with an issue with DistroKid last year that we dealt with, is that they were trying to release stuff too close, like 10 days apart, which I think was even too close. But yeah, he released 80 tracks, I think, last year. And one of them went viral on, people started using it in TikTok. It was shared 250,000 times via TikTok and Instagram. So so he was definitely a big proponent of just keep putting stuff out there and building the discography. And he's done it right. I mean, he's released everything pretty much independently. So no one's like, or there's very little of that percentage that's not going into his pocket. A lot of people who are releasing with labels and stuff, they're giving up a pretty big percentage of what they're getting paid back,
That's awesome. That's great insight to the Soul Rising. You mentioned Mo. Are you talking about MC Rai by chance?
Mose, M-O-S-E.
Oh, M-O-S-E. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got some really amazing, medicine music style electronic tunes. A lot of them are 10 million plays or more. His YouTube's huge. He's got millions and millions of plays on his live mixes and cacao dances and all these all these things that are very much kind of defining this niche that we're in, of like healing, holistic dance music, you know.
Nice, nice. If you stop sharing your screen, it'll come back to just the main view of us. Oh, or that.
Which would you rather?
Yeah, we could probably start closing out pretty soon. So you can maybe just go back to just me and you on the screen. That's cool. That we just see a big elephant on the screen right now. Oh, there you go. Awesome, man. Cool. Yeah. So, really good insight to DistroKid. And then you said Amuse or Muse?
Amuse, AMUSE.
Okay. Amuse. And that's in Switzerland.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, it's got more of a label kind of structure around it. I'm not really sure. They really raised, a few years ago, they raised millions and millions of dollars for this startup. And one of the things that they like to boast about is that they have an app on the phone that you can do some stuff through that a lot of other distribution doesn't have available, to have mobile access like that. So they definitely spent their UI, their user interface is way nicer, way more modern than most distribution out there. So they've got certain little bells and whistles.
Nice. Yeah, I've never heard of it. So that's great to have that new information. I'll definitely check that out. And then also something we didn't mention today, but I think that we have talked about this, is that just using Submit Hub to try and generate some traction alongside Radar, put, maybe $10, $60, $100 behind a release if you're really believing in it or more, right? And
yeah.
Yeah, you have any insight to that as our last little bit of information?
Yeah, with Submit Hub, I've had varied success. I think there's certain genres, like if you're working in more of like a house, more like typical dance genre, especially because there's such a worldwide following. There's certain genres in the US that are actually more US based, and those genres typically do better. I've had a song that had more of a 4/Florida beat to it that has gotten on some bigger like house playlists that really, gave it an additional probably 30,000 plays off of, spending $3. But it's kind of a gamble because you can spend $60 and submit to a lot of different playlists and not get, maybe get accepted by one, or you get accepted by a bunch and you only get like 10 or 20 plays out of each. So it's kind of it's good to put energy in there and see if your genre has wide acceptance with playlists they have on there, and finding the curators who really play your type of music. So it takes a little bit of time and research, and it's definitely well spent. Like lo-fi chill hip hop, that stuff. There's huge playlists, and that's like an example. If you're producing in that genre, then you'd be silly not to be spending some time getting on those playlists and getting a lot of good plays for very low cost.
Yeah, our friend Gary Oakland, he's had some really good successes with, I think, lo-fi chill specifically.
Yeah, kids love that shit.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, the curator aspect of it too, like before the release, you're going on and you're trying to get in release radar and the artist Spotify section, and then also on Submit Hub, you're trying to submit before your release, right? To try and get some write-ups and some traction. And then after the release, you have like a good month of time to get those curators to repost what you already have out there. And it's a new world. I think, it's gone through so many iterations from like MySpace and Snowcap to then this and that. And I feel like Spotify and DistroKid, I like that you're saying something new here with Amuse. I think that it's really important every 6 months to really look in and like check out like 6 artists you like and see if they've changed their game plan at all. Because technology can change just so fast. Even like Facebook can change to the business page versus the private page. And all of a sudden, like you have to learn a whole new platform. How much access do you have? So, great stuff, Scott. I really appreciate all of your insight here in Ableton and also life in general, on a path of healing. And I hope that your music gets out there in that way. Check out Scott Nice, DJ Scott Nice. Where are you going? Is it tomorrow?
Yeah, I fly to Guatemala tomorrow to DJ Embodiment Festival on Lake Atitlan, and then after that, I'm going to be teaching DJing and production at the Embodied Sound course that's partnered with them.
Awesome. And Scott's doing this year round. Please check him out on Spotify. He's doing great out there in distributing his music. He's got how many releases next year coming out?
Hopefully 24.
24 releases, if not more, with all the different collaborations going on. And great insight. I'm going to wrap it up here with a little out, and then I'll log off with you, Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. So my name is Justin Ancheta from SF Garnish Music Production and Soul Graffiti Studios. We have classes year-round at our studio, Boutique Studio in North Oakland, and online. If you want to join us, there's 18-hour classes and 36-hour classes, our producer program, and our academy. And what's great about the school is that it's worldwide. There's 8 locations worldwide, and we're the franchise spot in the West Coast. So please check it out when you can. We have great people coming through. Isaac Kotek just did a nice Ableton description on using white noise to find your mix and kind of the right decibels per track. A lot of cool bits of information. So check that out when you can. Please like and subscribe and share, and check out Scott Nice's stuff in the near future. He's got some great tracks on Spotify and other digital distribution. We're going out like that. Take care.